Hey FCF, good to be back with you. We're continuing our journey. This is day 4 on core, what I'm calling core critical truths. And we kind of left off last week talking about one sentence descriptions of God's character. God is light, God is love, God is spirit. And I want to go back to the God is love because it kind of tells us about God's central motivation, his core motivation for everything that he does. And let's kind of pull ourselves back away from everything. We've talked a little bit about already that the notion that everything came from nothing, or that everything we see, all the complexity of the universe and life forms, are accidental. That's irrationality. That's madness. That's a leap into madness. There had to be a personal, eternal first cause for all these things, because everything can't come from nothing, because nothing is nothing. So then we started looking at Romans chapter 1, and we deduced that just from observing creation and all of its complexity, particularly the life forms on planet Earth and human beings being the top of that, we are able to deduce, so we're using reasoning along with observation, that the Creator had to be first, the first cause, eternal, and the Creator had to be superior to the very best human that we see. So by observation and reasoning that God has given us capacities to do, we see that God is there and that he's the very best human, or better than any human being. And so we can kind of just by observation and reason know that he's almighty, he's all-powerful, and he is altogether good. Because evil is inferior to good. Evil can't exist without good. It's just a distortion or a misuse of good. Okay, so we kind of laid that foundation. And I want to take you somewhere. This is a question I've often asked people through the years. And the question is simply this. Picture for a moment that you are God, and nothing yet has been created, and yet love is this creative force. Love always wants to share its experience, its joys. It always wants to give. It's just the nature of love. And it says that God is love. He's motivated ultimately by love. So here you are, and we'll just theoretically say you're alone. So what would be the very best gift that you could give? What would be the kindest gesture that you could possibly make? Best gift you could give, kindest gesture you could make. Now, a hint, we do this, not necessarily for the same reasons today, but we do it as human beings. Okay, so man meets woman, they marry, and then they want to have children. Well, they want to have children. Why? Well, because they love one another and they're experiencing a lot of joys in life, and they want to give the gift of life to yet another person. They want someone else to have the ability to experience everything they experience. Let's not talk about the sorrow and the pain. We know that's all a part of it, but there's a lot of good too. So let's go back to God. And the answer to the question is, what is the kindest and most generous gift that God could give? The kindest thing he could do, it would be to create beings that have the ability, the capacities to experience life like he himself does. There's no greater gift that God could give, to create what we call image-bearing beings. Let me read you just one verse from Genesis, or two verses. Genesis 1:26, it says, "Then God said, let us make man in our image and in our likeness. Let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." Verse 27, Genesis 1, "So God created man," and that just means mankind, "in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them." So when we look at this, again, many of you have heard me use this illustration before, but let's just say that we had a cockroach, and then we had a gerbil, and then we had a dog, and then we had a human. Well, by observation and reasoning, we know that the cockroach, because of its limited capacities, cannot experience life like even the gerbil. The gerbil has more capacity. But the gerbil's experience doesn't compare to, let's say, the dogs. They're more sophisticated animals. They have more capacity. But then when you take the smartest, best dog and put it beside a human, well, there's this gulf, because we have these capacities for mind, emotion, reason, will, self-awareness, so many. I mean, a human being looks at a sunset and is stunned with the beauty, or listens to music, or reads something. A dog, even the best of dogs, can't do that. So God took the risk with full knowledge of what it was going to bring, the trouble that it was going to bring, to create beings in his own image with mind, reason, emotions, will, freedom of will. And that's important for us to get a hold of, with full knowledge that that freedom of will that God would give us would be misused. Now again, why did he do this? Because he wanted to share the joys that he himself has by creating beings that have the capacity to experience what he experienced and to live the way he lives and to love the way he loves. Now, somebody inevitably is saying, well, God is so much above us, it would be kind of like us trying to relate to a cockroach. So how could he even be interested in us? Well, that's making God smaller than he is, not greater. Think about this. You could be the most astute professor or doctor or nuclear physicist in the world, but you could relate to your children authentically. Though they could never understand everything in every department that you understand, you genuinely cherish them. You genuinely care about them. And you can communicate with them, and they can understand you on multi-levels. They just maybe can't understand your particular science. So when we think of God as being above us, it doesn't mean that he can't relate to us. He gave us the capacities to be able to relate to him intimately. And he made us, the scripture says, for himself, not in a selfish way, but in a loving way, just like parents have children for themselves. They want to cherish that child. They want to develop that child. They want to nurture that child. They want to see that child go on and experience the very best that life can offer. That's where it started with God. So we're going to kind of end right there. But this thing of being an image-bearing being, a being that can experience life the way that God is and can communicate with God and have a real understanding relationship with him, is an extraordinary privilege that God gives to us. So God is light, God is spirit, and God is love.